Welcome to the show. It is IB Nation Sports Talk, and it is Midweek Mailbag Wednesday. Glad to have you with us. He is Jesse Stiers. I am Sean Stiers. Jesse, your day is going blank today.
Bad.
It didn't take you long to answer that. So are you looking for Derek to pick you up tonight?
Yes, I am.
All right. Derek, you've been challenged. Let's see if we can put him in the right frame of mind then. Glad to have you with us. As always, we are Quinn likes your Notre Dame hat anyway.
I appreciate it. This is a limited release, and I was one of 100, so there's not many out there.
Where'd you get it?
It's a 47 brand hat.
Okay. Got it from 47?
Yeah, the back has this on. They did limited releases. They did limited releases, and only Notre Dame, Alabama, and Michigan got these hats made. So,
all right. Well, Quinn is glad to see you anyway. So
I appreciate that, Quinn.
I was going to ask you, and I meant to say something today. It's been like the last 2 days we've had back-to-back media days, and that'll be it actually for the spring, other than the blue gold game. So it's just been busy. Like getting over to Notre Dame, getting other stuff done, getting things written. Got a story out on the 3 freshman early enrollee receivers at irishbreakdown.com right now. So you can check that out from today. A lot of good, interesting comments that receivers coach Chancey Stuckey had on the early enrollees. So you can check that out. But I was going to ask you if you had anything you wanted to whiteboard today, but didn't have time. That slipped my mind. So you're heading to Atlanta tomorrow, so we won't see you until after the blue gold game after today. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'll be out the rest of the week. Going down to Atlanta tomorrow, that's part of my stress today is just, every time you travel, there's always something to do. We're always kind of behind. Still need to pack, still need to get some laundry done. So all the good stuff.
Smash that like button if you would, and it is mailbag night, so bring on the questions this evening. That is what we're here for. We're here to answer your Notre Dame questions with the blue gold game coming up this Saturday, and then it is, in terms of the team, it is officially the off season. For us, we're going to be here every day still pretty much, so we'll still have plenty of Notre Dame football to talk about, but this will be the last sort of tangible time we get to see the Irish on Saturday at the blue gold game. And speaking of which, Quinn was sitting in here first. Weather considered, will the stadium be over under 30% full on Saturday? What do you think, Jess?
I think I'm going to take the over on this just because there is a lot of stuff going on offensively that's new. I think a lot of people are going to want to see Sam Hartman and what that's going to look like. I think, the switch from Chris Tyree to wide receiver, I think that's going to intrigue a lot of people. And then just obviously, seeing what the running backs are all about. So I think offensively as a whole, I think you're going to get a lot of attention from some people. And yeah, if it's a nice fair weather day, I definitely think you'll clear 30%. So I'm going to do a quick search real quick, and I want to see what Notre Dame's football capacity is. It's 77,500, and then so you take that.
So around 23,000, something like that would be 30%. Is that in the ballpark?
23,000 people. So
not bad math for a non-math guy. Huh?
But yeah, I just think the overall buzz for everything going on offensively, and if you throw in it's a nice, decent day, I think you're going to get 30%.
You made some good points. Like I think the Sam Hartman factor would be at the top of my list. Follow that with the Jared Parker factor and even the Tyler Buckner factor. Like all three of those guys And then you've got the Tobias Merriweather factor. You've got the Chris Tyree factor moving to wide receiver. You've got the Lorenzo Styles factor a little bit farther down the line. But like all of those things right there, because I was originally going to say under, but then when that's typically what brings out good turnouts to the blue gold game or, to spring games around here, blue gold game around here. Like every place kind of has its different interests, I think, when it comes to the spring games, but it's typically a newness factor that brings in a lot of fans. And so the weather is still not supposed to be great, but the forecast has changed a little bit in the last couple of days. So maybe we'll see if that kind of keeps sliding in the right direction for Saturday. So I'll agree because of those things, because of all that newness, especially Sam Hartman, and then right after that, the offensive coordinator Jared Parker as well. I'll agree. I'll say they'll get at least 30% rain or shine out there Saturday afternoon. Good point.
Yeah, and they say, I just looked at the weather.com. The high is 47 degrees. Grab yourself a hot chocolate or a coffee inside the stadium. Maybe sneak in a flask if you need to stay warm. But I think people will be there to have a good time. And a lot of people
don't let Wayne catch you, though. Don't let Big Wayne, the big usher down there on the field. Don't let him catch you with that flask.
I'd like you said, though.
I don't know.
I think the unknown is what gets a lot of people, and there's a lot of kind of unknowns right now on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are all great points. So I think that those things right there are good to push it over. Interesting one from Andrew. He threw in a couple of super chats for us here right off the top, and thank you very much for the super chat, Andrew GK23. He says his uncle took Tyler Buckner and Sam Hartman fly fishing today. Not super football related, but it's good to hear they're building that quarterback relationship. And then he threw in a follow-up super chat. Thanks again. He said also, if you're interested, he said TB, Tyler Buckner, definitely, the better fisherman. You ever been fly fishing?
I think so. I think I went one time.
You think so?
Yeah, I was in Myrtle Beach.
Do you know the difference between fly fishing and regular fishing? Fly fishing is like where you have kind of a loose line and a big long pole, and you pull out the line. And I don't even know if is there a reel on a fly rod? Like, I don't even know I've never been myself, but you definitely, it's like you got the lure, I think, and you kind of flip it out there and bring it back in and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I definitely did it. I used to date a girl whose dad was like really big into fishing, and we went to Myrtle Beach one time, and we were fly fishing off one of the boats in the water. I remember. So I wasn't very good myself, and I was getting very frustrated. Fishing is a very patient thing, and I'm not super patient. So
he says, Derek says, Sean, what father has to ask his son if he's been fly fishing? I know I haven't been fly fishing, but I know, like he's an adult. He's got a life of his own as well. So he could have been fly fishing, and I didn't know about it. Like he just said, he thinks he did it in Myrtle Beach, but the ocean seems like a weird place to fly fish. It's like you typically hear people more, I think, out on the river and stuff like that doing it. But again, I've never been myself. They made a whole movie about it one time, wasn't it? A river runs through it. Isn't that like the big fly fishing movie? I wasn't really interested in that either, but okay. All right. So you think you've been? I haven't. Rob says, guys, with what seems like an increase in the passing game coming, what's your expectation of yards per game and average touchdowns per game? Oh my goodness. That's a big one there. Like hit us with a brick right off the top. I mean, they threw for over 200 yards a game last year. Do you think they push 300 this year? I'm thinking 275, 280, somewhere in that range. What do you think? Because I think the run game is still going to be prominent. They're going to have a much better passing game, but I think the run game's still going to be pretty prominent. What do you say?
I'm trying to honestly, I'm trying to look up their numbers
From last
last
year?
year. So in 11 games, Drew Pine had just about 2,000 yards. So that's close to like 181 per game. And touchdown wise, he threw 22 in 11 games. So that's 2 per touchdowns. I would say that touchdown per game, I think you would look at passing touchdowns probably 2 to 3 per game. And I think you're going to average around 3 a game. But what you're talking about, it's just hard to know what that balance is going to be between passing and running. And I think Marcus Freeman is a guy who has talked about that he wants to be he wants to establish that run game. Like the run game is going to be something that's critical for them.
Still gonna be
I
part of it.
think I
Yeah.
think that they'll sit between 250 and 300 a game. I think against better teams they'll be getting close to 300. And then some of the teams that are not as good, I think they'll definitely clear 300. So I think their average will probably sit 275 ish, around 3 touchdowns a game. And just Sam Hartman's not going to have the numbers that he had in the past because he's not had a run game like this, and a coach that wants to be a pretty even split 50-50 pass and run.
Washington led the nation, 369 passing yards per game last year. Southern Cal was third at 335. Wake Forest, of course, led by Sam Hartman, almost 312 yards a game last season. North Carolina, 309. They ranked 11th. Ohio State ended up ranking 14th at 298. Interesting how many of the top passing offenses Notre Dame faced last year, with USC and then North Carolina and Ohio State all in the top 14 last season. But yeah, that again, Hartman, well, not Hartman, but Wake Forest, with obviously Hartman, they had another quarterback there as well, but they were almost 312 yards per game. So I'd put them comfortably, like I started off, around 275, 280. I think you said 250 to 300. I could see that pretty easily. But again, the run game is going to factor in, and like Wake Forest didn't have the run game that Notre Dame and Hartman are going to have this year. Notre Dame only averaged 207 passing yards a game last season. So it's going to be a big step up. The touchdowns are just always – it's always hard to figure what that's going to look like, because you do still have running backs who are going to factor in there. Like you might, big pass to get you down inside the 10-yard line, and then a running back finishes it off, something like that. But I think that I think it's going to be a much different looking passing attack than what we've seen here recently. I think you can count on that. Quinn, what is one time you've had to keep your comments to yourself as a Notre Dame fan? I sat next to Denard Robinson on the way back from the 2012 National Championship. Still wasn't over the under the lights game in 2011. Anytime you've had to kind of bite your lip as a Notre Dame fan, Jess?
Yeah, so this is one that actually happens to me a lot because I lived in Michigan, so I dealt with a lot of Michigan fans for about 4 years of my life. And then I moved to Ohio for graduate school. And now I live in Ohio more. So I've lived in Michigan and Ohio for like 4 years each. And both of those bring Michigan and Ohio State fans. And obviously Michigan has been a long time, rival of Notre Dame. And now with Ohio State and Notre Dame playing, here and there more, it's just a lot. You hear a lot of stuff about, the conference stuff and like why Notre Dame doesn't want to join a conference and that sort of stuff. So that's the stuff I ultimately have to kind of bite my tongue on is, Notre Dame not being in a conference and why they're not in a conference. And everyone has a reason why, they should or shouldn't be in a conference. So that's one that comes up quite a bit. And just that what comes along with it. People think that Notre Dame doesn't play a hard schedule just because they don't belong to a conference, and that a conference championship is the end all be all in terms of college football sometimes. So that's just like a larger topic that comes with many other minor topics that I bite my tongue on because I get tired of explaining it over and over. Like it's just no one, and ultimately no one listens to you. And it's like, guys, I've been a Notre Dame fan for a very long time. Like I know a couple things about what I'm talking about.
Yeah. There's nothing specific I can think of. I'll just say I bite my lip quite a bit when I hear, people, you know, who kind of start down a road with whatever narratives, about Notre Dame or whatever, because I don't feel like getting in a big argument, just too old to to deal with that kind of garbage, I guess, anymore. So I can only imagine what you went through with your whole Michigan experience when you were in college and all, and when you lived in Michigan for a little bit after that. Let me see. Anthony, would you say that because Notre Dame is a national team and travel for most fans is expensive is a major factor in small spring game attendance compared to the large state schools? I mean, I think that that's part of it because it is interesting, like when I was talking about attendance before, like obviously you go down south, I would say weather is a factor as well. The weather is always, typically nicer down there. Like if the game had been last weekend, it would have been beautiful out there this weekend. But like I do find it odd sometimes that you don't have a bigger turnout from, kind of some of the local fan base when it comes to the blue gold game. But I definitely think the fact that you do have a spread out fan base and it is a private school as opposed to a state school, that does play into it.
Yeah, I think some large factors are the fact that Notre Dame has more of a national presence, and their fan base is spread out all over the country. And why go expend the resources, time, money just for a spring game? I think a lot more people would be interested in coming to an actual game, once the season starts.
Real deal, yeah.
Yeah, and then you talked about, how the weather's crappy, so it's like, why take a vacation and time off work if you can't even come to, a place that's ultimately going to be super nice out, as well. And I think another large part of it is just, South Bend's not metro I guess is the best way to put it. Like, it's not like an Atlanta or Cleveland or Columbus or an Indianapolis. Like, it's just not it's
Not
not
nearly
big
as
enough.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, so the people that are here, I think just the spring game is just like, it's just another kind of common day, and they know it's just practice and everything. And I think what ultimately surprises me is kind of the lack of like student turnout at one of these things. Like, it could be something that's ultimately, pretty fun, something to do on a Saturday. You could tailgate for a little bit, come hang out. And I think that's another big difference that you see with state schools. So I think that they might have a little bit more fun kind of, making an event out of it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. And like even look at a place like Texas, you've got good weather, one, just like I talked about. Two, it's a state school, and you've got so you've got a built-in fan base sitting right there in Austin. Austin is growing all the time, and it just makes sense that you're going to have a big turnout for a place like that. Really, over most of the South, there's a lot of those places. It's like, what else are you going to do in the middle of April down there? Especially if the weather is good, you might as well get out and go to the game. DJ says, I think Jabron Payne will get a bunch of carries Saturday, even if he has a great game. How much season work will he get considering running back depth? How far up the depth chart can he realistically go? That's a really good question because he has had a good spring. How much of it, I mean, his opportunities that he's gotten this spring have had to do with the fact that, like, Logan Diggs was out for a bit. Jadarian Price has been out the entire spring as he rehabs and gets ready for the summer. But he's made an impression. And what's going to be tough for him is the fact that you've got Jeremiah Love also coming in this summer. And we'll actually talk about Jeremiah Love coming up in rapid fire in a little bit. But I think it's going to be tough. I think that at the very least, he's a candidate to be back there on kickoff return. I know that last year when Dylan McCullough came in, he had, I believe it was like a checklist of 8 different jobs for the running backs, and trying to figure out which backs matched with which jobs / situations and stuff like that, whether it's like third and short, goal line, or like if you've got a passing situation or whatever it happens to be. He's definitely opened some eyes, but I'm going to be really curious to see that as well, just what that looks like for him, because you are adding another really good running back into the mix. I think the question for Jeremiah Love is going to be, how quickly is he able to, be a complete running back, as in, Dealer McCullough and most running back coaches will tell you, you're not going to get on the field until they are confident in you as not just a runner of the football or a catcher of the football out of the backfield, but pass protection. That's a huge thing, because you don't want to get your quarterback killed, and those guys have to be able to pass protect as well. What do you think, Jess?
I think it's tough because a lot of the stuff that you talked about, obviously, there's Audric Estime and Logan Diggs ahead of him, two guys that saw a lot of touches last year. And correct me again, the guy that's hurt, Jadarian Price, is that
Right,
who it is?
right.
And then, yeah, the fact that Jeremiah Love is coming in, you have a very stacked running back room. But I do think that Payne has the opportunity to get in there at the number 3 spot, depending on how long it takes Jadarian Price to recover. And I think that's something to look forward to, because Notre Dame has proven that they'll cycle through 3 running backs. Like it can be a 3-back running back, rotation. Last year we saw Tyree, Audric Estime, and Logan Diggs. And I think that that's another thing that you will see this season, is the fact that that they're going to, I think, use a third running back in some sort of rotation. How many touches that is, I'm not sure, but I like the 3-man running back because you're keeping your legs fresh. And when you have depth and you have the talent, I don't mind kind of like the hockey style line shifts and using kind of Audric Estime late in the game, and using his power when teams are a little bit more gassed and worn down. Keeping your running backs, fresh is definitely a surplus. Like it's something that they need to take advantage of. So I could see him working into that 3rd-man spot. There's definitely an opportunity. And I think if that doesn't happen, he can make his way onto the field in other ways. Like you were talking about, maybe a returner, maybe, as like a gunner on special teams, or maybe a gunner on kickoff team. Like he's going to find his way onto the field because he's had such a good spring.
Yeah. I think he's got to be out there on some special teams. Question will just be how many. It's, again, finding that role, consistent role out of the backfield could be tough, just because of the numbers and the depth of talent that they've got back there right now. Rob makes a good point. Hey, folks, hit that like button. I don't even know if I threw the reminder up at the start of the show. Smash it, hit it, kill it. The like button. It's your friend. It doesn't cost anything. Just hit it, and it helps us out. We appreciate it. And of course, if you're listening later on the podcast, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star, review and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, there you go. There's your daily spiel. But thank you, Rob, for the reminder, because I forgot that right off the top. Okay. Anthony wants to know, do they make the moves of Styles to cornerback and Lewis to safety? Tell you what, Clarence Lewis asked about the safety thing yesterday, and he kind of gave the Lorenzo Styles answer. It was, just more or less, I'll play wherever they tell me to play, kind of thing. He's mostly been working as the nickel during spring, is what he said as well. So, I would be shocked if they don't, they're probably looking in the transfer portal right now, since the portal is open. That is I think that, that's going to be their first priority, is go to the transfer portal. But you have to find qualified guys in the transfer portal. You don't just want to bring anybody in. So I think it makes a lot of sense, at the very least, to, to start cross-training Clarence Lewis at safety. And I mean, the way Lorenzo and I don't think Anthony was with us yesterday. We had all kinds of, and Anthony, if you weren't, go to the, like whether it's Spotify or Apple or wherever, yesterday's show, we had, we got to talk to both Mike Mickens, the cornerbacks coach, and Lorenzo Styles yesterday, who showed up for the cornerbacks media session yesterday morning wearing a white defensive jersey. Typically, the offensive players at Notre Dame practice wear blue jerseys. The defensive players wear white. Lorenzo Styles was wearing a white jersey. Said he basically got his first full practice with the defensive guys. So, and there's a story up about it as well at Irish Breakdown, so you can read that with some of their quotes and thoughts and stuff like that. But I think that they're going full speed ahead, at least with the Lorenzo Styles, where they say we're going to get to see him play both out there Saturday. So I think we're all curious to see that. The question is going to be the Clarence Lewis thing. They've got to come up with some depth somehow, and Clarence Lewis would seem to be the best option that they have to give them some more depth at safety. So I would think that they're going to pursue that, but I would have thought that they would have done that during the spring as well, and it doesn't sound like they did a whole lot of that during the spring.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep it short and sweet. I don't know a whole bunch about moving Lewis to safety, but I really have liked the idea of moving Lorenzo Styles to corner just based off of what he was able to accomplish. I know college is different from high school, but what he was able to accomplish as an elite, defensive cornerback in high school, he shows a lot of good things on tape. And I talked about this a little bit on Monday. I just think it's something that can help clear up some of his psyche a little bit and just allow him to kind of play football and naturally react and just overall use his athleticism and natural instincts on the football field. And I think that's when Lorenzo Styles is going to be at his best, when he's out there just, having fun essentially. And I just don't know if he's had a lot of fun recently playing wide receiver. Not that it's, a Notre Dame thing or anything like that. I just think that he's just so caught up in his head of, where he needs to be. And there's just a lot less to it at playing corner. You're just kind of out there reacting based off of, the route that the wide receiver is running and, your coverage. Are you in man or zone? So I think it's something that's going to benefit Lorenzo Styles.
Yeah. All right. Let me see. Jesse, I'll let you take this one first if you want. Who are your starting receivers and linebackers? This one's sure to get you in trouble one way or the
other. So wide receivers, I'm gonna go XZ and slot. I think your X wide receiver is gonna be Tobias Merriweather. I think that your Z wide receiver is gonna be Deion Colsey. And then I think the slot is gonna be a toss-up between Jaden Thomas and Chris Tyree. But if we're up to me, I would like to see more of Chris Tyree in the slot. So I think he's a true slot, just that, what he can do with his quickness and stuff like that. And I was reading an article today that, he's actually faster out at wide receiver because he's just playing more in space and straight line running and that kind of stuff. So I think that at the beginning, it might be a little split between Thomas and Tyree in the slot, but I think Tyree is going to ultimately end up being your slot. And I like that trio of wide receivers of Tobias, Deion, and Chris Tyree. Moving on to linebackers.
The other thing, just I'll give my thoughts on the wide receivers real quick, and then I'll let you give your linebackers first. I agree with what you're saying. The thing that Tyree does, and I mean, we talked to Jaden Thomas today, and like, you can see why some of these announcers who should know better, than calling him a tight end, like the TV guys, they should know better than calling Jaden Thomas a tight end. But that dude is yoked up, and
like, he's not a true slot.
You can see how they can confuse him for a tight end because of how massive
he's like he's like a Michael Mayer split out kind of guy. And I think they'll use him in more of like jumbo kind of looks, or, like short down kind of slot type looks is when you'll see him more in the slot.
Yeah. And my point is, you can have Tyree in the slot, and you can also, move Thomas out. He can really play either one of those outside positions, but you can, very easily see him, bumping over to Z probably pretty consistently for a guy like Colsey. And they'll probably, they'll do some four wide, I think, sometimes as well. And because of the versatility that you have with Chris Tyree, like, this is your whiteboard opportunity here, Jess, but all the places you can motion Chris Tyree and do things with him, you can almost have like two slots standing next to each other. You motion Chris Tyree, and then he goes someplace else, So like, yeah, like those four guys, I think, are going to be the primary guys at wide receiver, and especially as the season starts, and then what happens with the young guys after that. But you definitely have a lot of versatility by adding Chris Tyree into that mix.
Yeah, and someone just kind of asked, who's going to be the number one between Tyree and Jaden. So to kind of wrap up the wide receiver part of this, again, I just think it's going to be kind of split depending on personnel packages and what ultimately they're trying to accomplish with the game plan. But I think as the season goes on, Tyree will be your number one slot. And I don't think that you waste moving him to the slot if you're not going to utilize him to his full potential.
But again, I think they'll be on the field a lot at the same time as
Yeah.
well. I wouldn't even necessarily say 1 versus 2. You just have a lot of versatility between those two guys because you can line Tyree up just about anywhere you want, whether it's slot in the backfield, or even on the outside. And you can basically do everything with Thomas other than line him up in the backfield. And they've used him as an extra blocker in what confuses announcers as 13 personnel when it's really still 12 personnel, just because he's lined up in line as a blocker in there with those tight ends. So, I wouldn't even look at the slot as a number 1 versus number 2 guy, because I think we're going to see them both on the field quite a bit this season. Definitely. So what about your linebackers then?
Middle linebacker is going to be JD Bertrand. Rover is going to be Jack Kaiser. And then the will linebacker, I think, is going to be Prince Kali. I think Maris is going to get passed up this season. I don't know. By the end of the season, I think Prince Kali will be the will linebacker. I don't know how long. I think Maris might get the opportunity at the beginning, but if Maris plays how Maris has been playing, I think it's going to be a quick hook. And there'd be more to gain by getting Prince Kali in there now, essentially, because if the gameplay is so similar that, between Maris and Prince is obviously a lot younger, and so the improvement can develop more. I think you're going to see Prince Kali kind of overtake that position by the end of the season. And then if you want to count Viper in that, I know that sometimes,
well, that's still more defensive end. Like I think that the other X factor, because I agree with what you're saying on Kali, the two X factors are Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler, especially when it comes to like nickel and dime type situations, because I think that allows them, to move Jack Kaiser inside. And the feeling I got is that, maybe they're liking what they're seeing out of Jack Kaiser inside based on some comments, from the coaches this weekend. Not that he's always going to be there at will linebacker, but I think we'll see more of Kaiser at will linebacker than we have in the past. And then it becomes like Ziegler. I do think Ziegler is going to be part of the mix, like whether it's Rover or even playing inside, but Sneed, I think, is going to be over there at Rover as well. I think there's going to be a mix at that Rover position this year situationally. But like we've said before, JD Bertrand is the only given, but I do agree that Prince Kali is coming on. I think he's coming on. This is the most important question I think we've had on the show in a long time. Who has the better mustache, Jesse or Pedro Sanchez? And now, are we talking about Pedro Sanchez, the
Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking about like the Spanish Prime Minister. I didn't realize Pedro's last name was Sanchez and Napoleon Dynamite. So I've got to go with Pedro then, because if you've seen Jesse's mustache up close,
okay,
you don't want to.
Yeah, that's a lot of crap. You're just a hater.
Well, defend yourself then. Tell us why yours is better than Pedro's.
I would honestly go with Pedro's, but I didn't want to hear it from you.
I gotcha.
John's on my side.
John is John Christophic. That's right. He says Jesse. All right. Let me see. Josh says he read Kaiser is moving to Will. Any truth to that? Now, I don't know that there has been a definitive. He has been playing there, but some of that is also situationally, where like he's moved in, again, like in some of these nickel dime type situations, like he's moved in, and some of these other guys, whether it's Ziegler, we haven't seen as much of Sneed or Kali in the last couple of weeks because the injuries that are keeping him off the field, so like Ziegler has been part of that. Even Leofau has moved over there, but Kaiser has played more Will. Again, he's going to play some Will this year. I just don't know how much that it's going to be. Like, will he be a rover, on traditional first and second down? And then, like when you get into passing situations, that's when he moves inside. I think that there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching because it was on yesterday's show. We had the soundbite from Al Golden where he was talking. He was asked about Kali, Sneed, and Ziegler and how they're looking heading toward the season. And he said all three of those guys are going to play. Again, that doesn't mean they're going to be every down guys, but at least situationally, they're all going to be part of different sub packages. So, and I think in those sub packages, at least what we've seen in, like in the, 2+ practices this spring, and maybe we'll get a better idea of it out there Saturday at the Blue Gold game as well. That's when Kaiser, I think, definitely moves inside to Will. I still don't know if that's a full-time thing. So that might be overreading it like a full-time move to Will, but he's going to play some Will. So
I think you're going to see him move to Will because naturally the rover position is a little bit more coverage esque, right?
right.
And I think that there are better options in terms of rover linebackers who are going to
Yes.
be better in coverage. And I mean, listen, as Notre Dame fans, we should be elated, over the moon, excited about all the quality linebackers that Notre Dame has right now on their depth chart. Like you have Prince Kali, JD Bertrand, Jack Kaiser, Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, Preston Zinner, Nolan Ziegler, Maris. And Maris has struggled, but he's still an overall good player. And I think I can't remember a time that Notre Dame has had this much depth, excitement, and just overall athleticism at the linebacker position. So I think that that's something that's going to help them tremendously this season.
And it's starting to grow across the board at different positions. Now there are other position groups that need to fill it out, but like you're right, like there's so much talent in that linebacker room, and all the guys that people want to talk about are freshmen and sophomores, but that's a good thing. They obviously need more at the back end of the defense, but the corners, look at all the young talent that you're starting to fill that room up with. We've talked about the quarterback room time and again. Look at the running back room right now, and the wide receiver room is starting to fill out as well. So, in a pretty short amount of time, they have stocked this team with talent like we haven't seen before. So,
Yeah.
it's coming. It's
And I
coming.
think Josh brings up what I would have in an ideal world. Like if everyone was playing at their best, I would love Snead at Rover, Bertrand at Mike, and Kaiser at Will. I think that is your best
That would
lineup,
be sort of
assuming
yeah,
everyone's
like
playing at the top tier level, the
everyone
best of their
knows what they're
ability.
doing. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I
Exactly.
think that would be the ideal lineup because what Snead can do at Rover in support of the pass game and the run game, that would be tremendous. And then you have obviously Bertrand as the general, kind of holding it down at Mike. And then like Will is kind of like the hybrid of Rover and Mike. It's kind of like the in between of those two positions. Got
Right.
to be pretty stout in the run game, but also be pretty decent in the pass game. I would say at Mike, that's the least kind of you need the least responsibilities in the pass game. You're in there predominantly for what you're doing in the run game.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's why I think that Kaiser is better suited to play Will. Everything that we've seen of him playing Will in the short amount of time that we have this spring, I've said all along, I really like him at Will. And, like the whole, like whether or not it turns out to be Snead depends on, again, does he know what he's doing? Does, is he not getting lost? Does he, blow, is he not blowing coverages and stuff like that? Like we saw in the Gator Bowl. Just fix some simple things, but everything sounds pretty, like it's trending in the right direction for him and some of those other guys as well. Derek wants to know, do you move Lewis and Barnes to safety or just one? Why is Barnes the better option? Why is Barnes the better option? Well, if you're going to move one of them full time, Lewis at least does give you some depth there at the nickel. And what we've seen of him in the nickel, he's done a pretty good job of it this spring. But then the question is, like, what are you doing with Thomas Harper. And he's a guy who kind of has flown under the radar a little bit. Barnes, again, it's like we saw him in that one practice. I really want to see more of him this Saturday. And I would say Barnes is just a better option because Lewis gives you more versatility in terms of being able to play that nickel if you need it.
Shoot, I forgot about Thomas Harper. That's the Oklahoma State transfer that's primarily a nickel guy.
Right. Exactly.
Man, there is a lot of options of what they can do moving pieces around in the secondary. And I think that's just as exciting, like you kind of just hinted at what's going on depth-wise at a lot of these positions.
Right. And they're starting to find some of that. And maybe that's why Barnes kind of got more of the look back there. DT Roll Hunter, give us your spring game surprise predictions. Jess, I'll let you make one if you want. This was kind of along the lines of what, the show tomorrow is going to be about with Vince and I. So tomorrow and or on Friday, but I'll let you make a prediction, a surprise prediction, if you would like.
I think I think you're going to see. I think the running backs are what the running backs are. I think the offensive line is what it is. But I think you're going to see some surprises in the pass game. I think the pass game is going to open up a little bit, obviously, with Hartman. And I think someone like Chris Tyree is going to have a really good day in the slot. And, if that's a surprise to you or not, take it how you want. But I think it's considered a surprise because we've never seen Chris Tyree play at wide receiver. And I think he's going to provide a lot of production on the offensive side. Defensively, I think you're going to see a lot of improvement out of the defensive line as a unit. I think Junior Tuihalamaka is going to have an explosive game on the defensive side. And I think him and Botello are going to be a very good 1-2 punch at Viper this season. But I mean, I've said it before. I think Junior Tuihalamaka is going to be the kind of like chess piece on defense this year, just because of, coming from linebacker, he's got the speed and he's got the size to be able to hang on the defensive line in different personnel packages. I think he's going to be on the field a lot. You're going to see him kind of at the Viper. You're going to see him maybe as a nose guard in some packages, maybe some nickel packages, but I think he's going to be a big surprise for a lot of people.
I like the defensive line prediction. I think we'll come away. I think people are going to come away with a pretty good feeling about the defensive line. Now, I say that, and we don't know exactly what the offensive and defensive line matchups are going to look like. Like I've said before, I think that they should put their first team offensive line, their first team defensive line, and keep them together and have them match up against each other, and then just sub in with some other guys. I don't think they're going to do that because of the fact that they're doing the draft again tomorrow morning. So we've seen some really good things from the defensive line. I think that they're going to show out, but at the same time, not knowing how this is all going to be pieced together, it's not necessarily going to be a completely cohesive unit that'll be out there together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. I'm glad.
Derek has been dying to know what I think of Notre Dame's blitzing.
I just saw that. So what do you think of all the blitzing, Jesse?
I think that all of the blitzing is a great sign as a defensive unit because, hear me out here, you cannot get into blitzing and the complexities that come with blitzing if you are not comfortable in your base defense and if you're not comfortable with what your secondary can do on the back end in terms of coverage. If you have a poor secondary, you're not blitzing and putting those guys out there on an island. So I think it shows, one, they have a lot of confidence in their secondary, and two, the overall everyone has a better understanding of Al Golden's defense in year two because, simply put, I mean, you cannot blitz guys and risk someone being out of position if you're blitzing and a busted play happen. And so I think that they want to start to put pressure on the other team. And, the turnovers started out really slow last season. I think that's something they want to get back to. And, how do you create turnovers? when you create pressure, you speed up, everyone's reads, you speed up the quarterback a lot. So I think the blitzing is overall a good sign, but I just don't want them to get too blitz happy. I don't want it to turn into that situation. I want the blitzes to be, thought out. It's almost like you're baiting them all game with one look, and then you all of a sudden kind of give them a blitz based off of something that you've been showing them kind of the whole game. So yeah, not to be too long winded, but it just shows to me that there's overall confidence in the secondary, and the defensive line and linebackers knowing where they're supposed to be on the field.
Yeah. Good question from DT Roll Hunter. There is the draft really just to hide the two deep? I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's probably not a bad call. I don't doubt it. They don't have to show the two deep that way. We've seen for the most, like especially like the offensive line, we know what that looks like. The defense is a little bit tougher just because of the way they've done things this spring by announcing starters day to day. So it's always, there's just always a piece kind of coming and going with the defense. But that is a good possibility there, DT, that you draft the teams and you don't have to show it too deep that way. You just roll through the summer and nobody really knows exactly what it is. And as Anthony said, what you were just talking about there, Jesse, that was a whiteboard answer. Anthony really misses the whiteboard. So
I had some complications last week, and it's haunted me. It's really put a wrench in my whiteboard. I'll be back and refreshed after the spring game. I think that
all right,
we'll have a lot to talk about after the spring game. Some overreactions. I can't wait for Overreaction Monday. I might just join that Monday show so I can be a part of
just to see all the overreactions. You might have to. Andre 3000 wants to know what set of players on offense and defense will help Notre Dame become an elite team in the 2023 season.
Offensively, Sam Hartman, the combination of Audric Estime and Logan Diggs, and Tobias Merriweather needs to be great. If it's not Tobias, someone's got to step up and catch those passes from Sam Hartman. Defensively, I think that Junior Tuialamaka,
by the way,
Morrison.
I meant to, like you were throwing out the Tuialamakas there a little bit ago. You do that better than some radio professionals say, Tuialamaka.
I got over my like a mental block of a word.
Air quotes in professionals. Yes, go ahead.
There's it was just like a mental block for the longest time, and I finally got through it and said it one time right, and I don't hear it any other way. So I just, as long as I keep saying it the right way, I think we'll be good. But yeah, I like Junior T. I like Benjamin Morrison, and someone on the defensive end, Viper, has to step up as well. I think whether that's Javante Jean Baptiste, I think he's someone who's potentially got to step up with the experience that he has. But it's overall, you got to kind of have one at each level: a linebacker, a corner, a secondary member, a linebacker, and a defensive lineman. But yeah, Junior T, Benjamin Morrison, and you know what? I'll put JD Bertrand in there because the mic always has to be solid. He's running the defense.
Yeah,
he's getting everyone set. So that's an important role. Whether he's showing up on the stat sheet every game with 10, 15 tackles, whatever it might be, he's doing a lot to get the defense in the right spot.
Whew, man, you went through all of them, and I don't really disagree with any of them. Sam Hartman is obviously it on, as far as the quarterback goes. I'll say Jadarian Price, a healthy Jadarian Price. They're still going to be in good shape, but I think that he's a guy who has, a little bit more wiggle, another gear to go to. Potentially Jeremiah Love, depending on, with the speed that he's got, depending on what he turns into. Tobias Merriweather is a must. Defensively, I'll go Jordan Botello on the defensive line at that Viper. I agree. Like JD Bertrand has to be elite JD Bertrand this year, but you also need the emergence of Sneed and/or Colley in that linebacker group as well. Obviously, Benjamin Morrison, Cam Hart, and then, Xavier Watts. I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call him an elite safety, but he is a really good safety And so for what they have, they need him to just keep ascending his game. So that would my group, but I like at the top of the list as far as like receivers who are going to stretch it, I would put Tobias Merriweather up there, like a difference making elite type wide receiver. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker. Who would you rather have back on this defense and why? Drew Tranquil or Lewis Nix the third?
Oof.
I'm going to tell you what. I would take 2012 Lewis Nix in a heartbeat. Before and after that, very inconsistent, obviously, but I would like 2012 version of Lewis Nix in the middle of this defense and what he could do, in terms of just disruption in the middle. If I could have 2012 version of Lewis Nix, I would drop him in there.
I was going to say the same thing, actually, and it's not a knock against Drew Tranquil because obviously he was a great player and still playing in the NFL right now. Fun fact, I also played against him in high school. Random stat of the day, fact of the day. But I like
sectional championship game.
Yep. Yeah, I'm more excited. I think that these linebackers can get it done, and I'm really excited to see what they can do overall as a group. And I think that if you could combine those linebackers with someone like Lewis Nix, who's disruptive up front, that's only going to help the line. Like those two would play off of each other. Linebacker play would be better, and Lewis Nix game would also get better because of how those two positions kind of work off of each other. So I would go with Lewis Nix as well. I think an elite nose tackle is something that is always underrated, who can just shove themselves into the run game and draw a double team and free up your linebackers a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. All right, another question.
Derek, it was quite the opposite. Tranquil owned us, and there was nothing that could be done about it. They just started giving him the ball, and it was basically just a wildcat offense. Our coach, if anyone's to blame, it was our coach. He blew the lead. We had like a 17-point lead on Drew Tranquil's team
in the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter, we started airing the ball out, throwing interceptions instead of just running the clock down. And literally, Tranquil getting the wildcat, and everyone that could be in front of him got in front of him, and it was like a power wildcat type formation. It was very hard to stop.
Yeah. Yep. ND Sailor asks, what do I think of the new addition to the women's basketball team? He's talking about Anna DeWolf, the former Fordham player. I was surprised, like a lot of people, I think, that they added a guard first because post is what they need the most. At least outwardly it seemed, after losing Lauren Ebo with her, she played her one and final season at Notre Dame after, basically she used her COVID year to come over. But the more you sit and think about it, DeWolf was the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year a couple of years ago. She averaged 17 points a game in her 4 seasons, and she's a really good three-point shooter. And they needed another three-point shooter to be able, to kind of keep things honest. And, like if you take Citron off the floor, to be able to have someone like DeWolf on the floor, or even have them on the floor, both at the same time, what it does for spacing and things like that. I mean, she shot, almost 34% from 3-point range in her career, and she's made almost 240 in her career. So I like what it can do in terms of stretching the defense and having another legit 3-point shooter on the field. I do expect them still to go out and find another post player, but I like what she'll bring, in terms of that 3-point threat. You can never have enough 3-point shooting in today's game.
Yeah, and that's, we kind of talked about this a little bit on Monday in Rapid Fire. I just think that they need, with those guards and their ability to pass the ball and get down in the lane, they're naturally going to generate a lot of attention, and you just need someone that's going to be open and be a knockdown shooter. And I think that is something that that she's going to be good at. And I think down the stretch, they kind of struggled with some of the 3-point shooting, and other teams kind of knocked down the three a little bit better than them, in terms of overall quantity and field goal percentage. So adding someone like that, I just think it's it's someone who takes Notre Dame's overall team score from like a 90 to like a 92. You know what I mean? Like if
Sure.
like in a video game, it just feels like she just adds a few more of those points and makes them just a better overall unit, more depth.
Yeah, and then Anthony with the follow-up on the addition of Northwestern transfer Julian Roper the second to the Notre Dame men. And when I think about that, I mean, I think it's a solid pickup. He doesn't have anything flashy. He does have a couple of years experience, and he'll have a couple of years of eligibility remaining. He had an injury, this past season, so he only got to play in 15 games. He can shoot the three a little bit. He looks like a pretty good athlete, a guy who can slash a little bit as well, which is they've needed an athletic upgrade for the last few years. And, Micah Shrewsbury coached against this guy for the last 2 years in the Big Ten. So he's familiar with him. So I think it's a nice piece to start off with. Still a long ways to go. He's not necessarily, it doesn't look like a guy you're going to build the team around, but he looks like, again, you've got to rebuild a roster, and you knew that would mean bringing in transfer types, and the fact that you can go out and get a guy who's going to be able to give you 2 years as an undergrad still, I think that is at least a good place to start.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an easy transfer for him, honestly, because going from Northwestern to Notre Dame, both obviously
Right.
academically rigorous schools, a lot of those credits are going to transfer over. So I think it just kind of worked out for them, and it's just going to be a piece in this kind of Shrewsbury's, how he's building up this roster in his first year.
Yep. Jesse, are you ready for some rapid fire?
I am ready for some rapid fire. We have talked a lot, and now it's time
to
to
talk
fire
some
away.
more. That's right. So, all right. So, double fill in the blank. It's blank that Chris Tyree has been referred to as a cheat code, and blank that Irish receivers coach Chancey Stuckey says freshman Braylon James is freakish.
So it's exciting that Chris Tyree has been referred to as a cheat code, and it's optimistic that Chancey Stuckey says freshman Braylon James is freakish. And why it's exciting, because I think it's just going to open up Notre Dame's offense so much. Chris Tyree, having a guy with that kind of speed in the slot, him being able to take the top off the defense and kind of open up some more underneath routes for Notre Dame's bigger body wide receivers, Deion Colzie, Jaden Thomas, like that's only going to help out their game. It's going to help out Sam Hartman's game. So I think that's so exciting in terms of what he can do to open up the pass game. And then when you talk about Braylon James and his freakish kind of qualities, Notre Dame at wide receiver has been a little bit lacking the last few seasons. And so when you can talk about guys who are under the radar, younger guys who are already being described as freakish, I think it provides optimism for the depth that they have at the wide receiver position. What's to come at the wide receiver position. I think we're going to start to see that transition into Notre Dame having some elite wide receivers again.
Yeah, Chris Tyree, it is video game level fun. Braylon James, it is long awaited and much needed that you're calling him freakish. Because like when I hear cheat code, what do you think of when you hear cheat code? You think of video games, like I remember like playing the Mario Brothers back in the day when you found the cheat code and you could get all the extra coins and all that stuff and get all the extra lives and like keep on playing. And like I just think of, like Tyreek Hill and Dante Hall, like some of those kind of guys who you just see go out there and just do crazy things out there on the football field because of the speed. And Chris Tyree was saying today that he thinks he's gotten even faster playing, just practicing so far for a few weeks at wide receiver just because of all the running that they do, like running the routes and downfield and all that stuff. And so if Chris Tyree is getting faster, open that cheat code, and that's going to be a lot of fun just because of the zigging and zagging and all the different things that he can do. And again, like these three freshman receivers, how much of it we're going to get to see this year, but to hear Chancey Stuckey, start to boast and talk about these guys and call him Braylon James freakish. It's pretty exciting because again, like think of where this receiver room, what it's looked like for the last couple of years and what it's turning into already. It's pretty exciting thinking about the next few years for him. Another fill in the blank. It's blank that incoming freshman running back Jeremiah Love ran a 10.54 in the 100 meters last weekend.
It is. What is the best way to put this? It is almost Olympic like that Jeremiah Love ran a 10.54. Like that'll get you qualified and get you pretty far in Olympic trials.
It will. It will.
And so when you hear a time of that and you hear that he's coming into an already stacked, running back room, I think there's, a lot of optimism for what's coming forward. And I've used that word optimism a lot, but I mean, it's the truth. And again, like, is it going good enough to win you the Olympics? No, like, it's kind of 9.8s, 9.9s, sub 10 is what's going to get you there. But I mean, we're talking about a senior in high school, right? So like it's only going to get faster the more that he develops in his terms of his strength and overall conditioning.
It is elite track and field speed is what it is. Like 10.54 in the 100. That is just like you said. Like if he wanted to focus on track and think about the Olympics, he could at the very least get to the trials. And if he focused on it full time, he could, probably be like that kid from Oregon a couple years back who wasn't there like a hurdler or something that was, he was like a wide receiver and ended up going to the Olympics as well. Like if he focused on nothing but track, he could probably find himself in the Olympics someday. So it's, again, it's very exciting to think about this guy, Jeremiah Love, being here at Notre Dame. He's going to be on campus in June once they start showing up for summer workouts. And then where it goes from there is going to be really intriguing with this already pretty full Notre Dame backfield. And he's going to have to find a way. They're going to have to find a way to get him on the field somehow with that kind of speed as a freshman, whether it's even, kickoff returns, punt, whatever it happens to be. Got to find a way to use that speed out there. So Derek gave us this one yesterday, and I saved it for today because, it's like, like you're much more NFL than Vince is NFL. So I gave Vince the stiff arm. So this is an NFL question. Do you buy or sell the NFL should hold its draft in the city that has the first pick in the draft every year? But, if they trade the pick, it would still be in that initial city, even if they ultimately end up trading the pick. So if you've got the number one pick, you get to host the draft that year.
I would buy it for about the first 10 years. And then after that, I would sell it because I think there's a lot of teams.
You're going to get repeats.
You're going to get a lot of repeats, a lot of, franchises that are kind of going through it, like the Texans comes to mind. There's certain teams I think who would never really ultimately see the chance to get there because they're just good run, franchises like the Steelers. A bad year for them is like one game under 500 Tomlin has never gone under 500. So it's like they would ultimately never probably get there. And just, thinking of like the Patriots, for example, I don't think that they would ever be bad. And considering how long Tom Brady was there, they weren't ever going to, sniff that first overall pick. So again, I think it would be cool like the first 5 to 10 years because not every team is the worst every year. But it's just, I think that not enough teams would get the opportunity. Like I like the concept overall. It's just not, I don't think everyone would get their chance ultimately.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea because at the very least, it would give, like you just had the worst record in the NFL. That's why you've got the number one pick. So it would at the very least give that city, like even though you just had the worst record in the league, it'd be like, hey, here's a little excitement. You still get to host the draft this year. So there's still going to be some buzz in your city, even if it's just for this year. But like I said, or, like you said, there would have to be a rule on like they could only host it like maybe every 5 years or something.
You're like hard knock rules.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't have it, more than X amount of times in whatever window, because like you could also see it going the other direction. Like the team that wins the Super Bowl, would get to host potentially.
What if you did it like a switch off every year? The worst team got it, and then the next year the Super Bowl winner got it, and then the next year the worst team. I think that would be actually really fun because you would see a lot more balance of new cities. Because I mean, let's face it. I off the top of my head, I don't know how many back-to-back Super Bowl winners there are, but it's not many. And often and not, it's not the same worst team every year. It might be
Well,
the same kind of group of worst teams, but it's still generally not the same. The best isn't the best repeat a lot, and I don't think that the worst repeat a lot.
see, and here's what's funny. Like Derek says, biased. You just want Dallas to get it. Well, here's the thing. Dallas. Here's the thing about Dallas right now. They're like knock on wood, they're not going to have the number one pick, but they're also not going to win the Super Bowl. So like they're always sitting there in the middle somewhere, so they never get anything. But you could also throw, because they've talked about moving the combine around at some point in the future. So like you could do first and last between the Super Bowl winner and whoever ends up at the number one pick, like between those two, like one gets the combine, one gets the draft, something like that, but again, mixing it up a little bit. You still need to find a way to mix it up, because there would be some repeats in there. You still want to keep the same cities from having things all the time. But I think it's an interesting idea for sure. Fill in the blank. Jalen Hurts became the highest paid player in NFL history this week, and it's blank that his agent, Nicole Lynn, landed Hurts as a client by initially sending him an Instagram DM.
It's very 2023 that she landed Jalen Hurts via DM. I think that that's a lot of kind of how today's world is. It's just kind of shooting your shot, floating someone a message, floating someone a DM. And I mean, what's the worst that they're going to say? No. And I mean, you didn't have the opportunity beforehand. And if you don't get the opportunity after throwing kind of a lob up there, I mean, it's not the end of the world. So I think it's a very kind of like 2023 trend that happened. And then, I'm just going to sneak in a quick little thing here, obviously, because, I can't not when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. I just think to me, I think this is going to benefit the Cowboys in the long term, because I think they paid a guy a lot of money off of just 1 year and a very good roster. And I just hope it blows up in their face, because that's a lot of money to give someone off of 1 year of resume. And again, a roster that was really, really good, that benefited him a lot.
I do agree with that, because like just looking at that, this is the same organization that Carson Wentz had 1 good year, and they gave Carson Wentz a big contract.
Right.
And where did that get him? Same organization, same front office. Now, Jalen Hurts is a different guy. And, you're right. We do kind of look at it a little bit differently as fans of a team in the same division, but like it's 1 good year, and to go all in on that short sample size. And as we've talked about before, that style of quarterback, the guy who runs, is also the guy whose career tends to end up being cut short because of all the hits that they take as well. So that's a lot of money to be paying. He's still young. He's only like 24, something like that. But
right, and I think that's
a lot of money to throw at him this quick.
The only benefit of paying him is you just got to get it out of the way. So like that's getting it out of the way is great. And I think they did a good job before some of these other kind of big name quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, kind of get their contracts finalized, because these newer contracts for Burrow, Lamar, they're only going to maybe be even more. So that the kudos to them for getting it off the books.
Yes. Fight Eagle on the road to bankruptcy. Good one, Josh. Okay, so Golden State forward Draymond Green. He's been suspended a game for the stomp of Sacramento's Domantas Sabonis after Sabonis grabbed his leg. Fair or foul? Sabonis that also was not suspended in this whole deal.
100% fair. Sabonis doesn't have a track record of, prior incidents. And I believe that's ultimately what got Draymond suspended, is the stomp. And, he's kicked people in the nuts before in playoff games. He's, gotten loud with referees. He's after
Let
getting
me ask
his.
you this:
You
Do
know
you
what,
think
let
it
me
was
finish
actually?
first.
Do you
Let me
think it was
finish
actually the
first.
stomp or all the stuff that came after the
That was
stomp?
going to be my next point. Is he didn't
Okay.
help himself by interacting with the refs, the Sacramento crowd. Draymond never does anything to help himself out in these situations. He's got a track record, and he can never just shut his mouth and and take things as they come to him. So, like, is it a cheap play what Sabonis did? Sure, but I think that the refs handled what he did. He doesn't have a prior history. He doesn't have a
I don't think
history
it
of
should
doing
matter,
these
though.
bad
I don't think it
things.
should matter. I think it should only be, like, why does the NBA feel the need to suspend people all the time? Isn't it enough to get a technical foul and get kicked out of the game that you're playing in? Why do you have to have another suspension after the fact? And why wasn't Sabonis assessed anything? Because he did. It was literally like a pro wrestling move out there, and it's like the whole thing is like pro wrestling, and Draymond Green gives everybody a villain to watch, and Sabonis, like you say, he doesn't have a track record, but I've heard that like I don't watch it as closely. I've heard that he can be a little loose with some of his actions, kind of punky type stuff, trying to draw some of this kind of thing
I mean,
as well.
I don't
So
think anyone
I
should be
just think the NBA
suspended.
goes overboard with all these suspensions that they level out. And I find completely ironic about this whole thing is that Joe Dumars, of all people, you didn't
I
grow up
saw that.
watching Joe Dumars.
No, he's a part of the bad boys,
He was a part of the bad boys, and
and
like
he
the
had a
stuff
hand
the
in this
Detroit
suspension.
the stuff that the Detroit Pistons, those bad boys Pistons were doing, like they did stuff 10 times worse than any of this, and none of them ever got thrown out of a game. It's like you clock a guy, maybe you get a personal foul called on you. You were talking about like a shot to the nuts. It's like, okay, hello, Bill Lambier, and and Rick Mahorn and that whole crew. And the fact that Joe Dumars was a charge of assessing this just makes me laugh hysterically
I
because Bad
agree that
Boys Pistons never got assessed anything.
no one should be suspended, but if someone's getting suspended, it should be Draymond. Full disclosure, Draymond is my least favorite player in the NBA.
Yes, that's true. That's true. You hate the Warriors and especially Draymond Green.
This is
So
correct.
I just feel like, I guess it's kind of the old adage that it's always the guy who reacts that kind of ends up being the one who gets the penalty or whatever. But Sabonis literally is grabbing him by the leg, which, is the whole reason that he ended up getting stomped on to begin with, and he got nothing out of this. Okay, so Major League Baseball is being praised for all these rules changes that they've made this season. And now they're going to experiment with some more this summer in the Atlantic League, which is basically their test league. It's like their laboratory for all the rules that they want to try out. One of them is a designated pinch runner. It allows a player who's not in the starting lineup to be used at any point of the game as a substitute base runner. The player who was subbed out, as well as the pinch runner, would still be able to return to the game. Now, there's two more. We'll go through these one at a time. So let's start with this designated pinch runner. You buy it or sell it?
I'm selling it. I think I get that they want to create more action and more pace in the game, but like this isn't little league anymore. I think that if you're in the MLB, a part of your 5 tool kind of toolbox involves having, some good speed. And I don't think that you should just be allowed to sub in a faster guy at random essentially. I think that your starters are your starters, and if you want to pinch run for someone, you got to burn one of your starters. I've liked a lot of these rules that they've done so far. But this one I'm really not a fan of because again, I think that in order to make it to the MLB, just like any other sport, like your speed is built into that. Like you have to have good speed if you want to be a
Right.
starter in the MLB.
It's part of strategy. Like if you have a slow running catcher at first base, you've got to make a decision. Do I want to pinch run for him or do I want to keep him out there? And like a lot of times the situation, how many outs, who's at the plate, all these different things, what the score is, they all come into play, and it's a big part of strategy. And I don't think that you should get rid of that. So I sell this one as well. You're absolutely right. This is like little league, high school, like the courtesy runners. It's
Right.
exactly what it is. It's the courtesy runner for the pitcher catcher that you have like at the high school level and below. And I don't think that they should do this at all. I'm not a fan of this. I guess, again, they'll experiment with it and see what happens. Another rule change they're looking at, the double hook designated hitter rule. It allows a team to use a DH throughout the game as long as the starting pitcher throws at least 5 innings. If that doesn't happen, the team loses the DH and the pitcher's spot would bat for the remainder of the game. So basically, you start with a DH, but if your pitcher doesn't go at least 5 innings, you lose the DH. Buy or sell that one?
I'm also a sell on this one. I don't think that, there's times where as a starter, maybe your stuff is flat that day and you get rocked and give up, 3, 4, 5 runs in the first 2 innings. I don't think you should be penalized for your starter getting rocked and the fact that he's got to come out kind of early and then you lose the DH overall. So and this basically is just saying if you can get a quality start out of your pitcher, then you get to also keep your DH. Well, no one wants a bad start out of their starting pitcher, and then no one wants to lose their DH because of it. You're taking a bat out of the lineup on top of, probably already being down if your pitcher's got to come out, so you're going to be down a decent amount of runs and you're down a hitter essentially by the time the 5th inning rolls around. So yeah. I'm a sell on this one as well.
And you've already, they just instituted the universal DH. Why would you want to go backwards on it? Why would you want to?
Right. It feels like you're undoing something that we finally were able to accomplish of getting the universal DH.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm with you there. They went to the universal DH so that you didn't have pitchers hitting, and now you're going to have relief pitchers hitting in that spot potentially. So,
even worse, because if starters will take batting practice because they used to, because you knew as a starter you were going to have to get some at bats in if you were in the NL, but relief pitchers are like, oh, I might even pitch today, so why would I even go out there and take at bats? You would see worse at bats having to see some of those relievers go up there and take some hacks.
Absolutely. There's also a single disengagement rule, which means pitchers can only take their foot off the rubber once per at bat to attempt to pick off or reset the pitch clock.
I am 3 for 3 on sells today. I think that, again, if you only get one disengagement, then what's stopping that runner from getting a huge lead and then just taking off? I get it. Again, you're trying to create more stolen bases, more action, more, moving of the game. But I think 2 is actually, per at batter was kind of small to begin with. I think I would be more comfortable with 3, and then to go down to 1, I think that's just too extreme for me. I think that the runner would just get too big of an advantage, because literally all you'd have to do as a runner is just get a moderately big lead, make the pitcher have to throw over, and then after that you can get an even bigger lead and probably end up stealing unless you get caught in a rundown. Because if he steps off and you're not stealing, use the
step offs. Yeah.
If you get a big lead after he's already picked off once, and you force him to step off, but he doesn't, and you're not stealing, well, then you're going to get the base free automatically because he's already stepped off more than one time.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. With all of that. Josh says he's a Warriors fan, grew up in the Jordan era. Draymond reminds him of Dennis Rodman. There's a lot of Rodman in Draymond.
Draymond reminds me of a trash can outside that I put all my trash in.
I just don't understand why
Draymond wouldn't be good if he was not in this exact situation with the Warriors.
You're a grown man. Your team is in the playoffs. Have you not been down this same road? How many times now? At some point, you need to learn from what's already happened.
And you're already down 0-2. This is a pivotal game in the series, not having someone like Draymond Green able to rebound and move the ball around to their shooters. It's just, to me, say what you want, whether he should get to the suspension or not, but it's just selfless play. He's a selfish player at the end of the day, and I don't think he considers the full picture more so than often. But I don't want to get stuck on that tangent again.
Did you watch any of the Cavs-Knicks game last night?
So actually, I had to miss about until halftime because yours truly made his YMCA basketball league debut last night. So I was getting some run in myself.
Were you the Draymond Green of your YMCA?
I was. I had. What did I have? I had 6 points, few rebounds, couple steals, couple assists, and some very winded lungs and legs by the time the game was over. I
I was gonna
forgot
say no pulled
what
muscles.
it was. We were all pretty gassed by the end of the game. I forgot what it takes to kind of run up and down the court and a full game of basketball like that. But it was a lot of fun, good conditioning. 1 for 2 at the free throw line, hit a nice deep three. Hit a nice. I think the highlight of my day was it was a 3-on-1 and a fast break. Me being the one, and I got to stop, and then I took it down full court and got a layup. So that was pretty fun.
Wasn't a cherry pick situation.
No, I had to take 3 guys on one. Got the stop, got the rebound, and then took it down the court myself.
Yeah,
so
little spin move at the end.
Yeah, not a lot of spin games in my repertoire.
All right. Good stuff tonight. Appreciate all the questions tonight. As always, it is almost blue gold time. 2 more shows, and then we're blue gold Saturday, baby. Well, enjoy your trip to Atlanta, Jess. Hopefully everything goes well. Safe travels, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Smash the like button on your way out, and of course, subscribe, rate, and review to help out the Irish Breakdown podcast channels. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.